you will take an international business course before you graduate. And here we focus a little more on the law of the international business. All right, if you bear with me a minute, I am going to draw a picture of the world. All right. Y'all get close enough to see it. This is Russia, Korea, Japan, China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Central America, Mexico, USA, Canada, Ireland, England, Spain, France, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, New Zealand, Germany, Austria, Italy, Greece, Africa, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon. These are all of the Estonia, Bulgaria, all of the former Russian countries. Here's Russia, here's India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran. All right. Now, I'm going to give you a world history lesson, and I expect applause and pictures afterwards. Okay. Now, globalization means that in the last 110 years, the world got smaller for business. As technology improved and transportation improved and the internet improved, what used to be hard to do has become very easy. So international law 100 years ago wouldn't have been a course, because the only business that you did was within your own country. The idea of doing business outside of your country just wasn't done. But certain things happened. As things happened, the world became smaller. Obviously not literally smaller, but it became smaller for purposes of business. Okay, 1869. Suez Canal. Gotta get you a better pen. The Suez Canal allowed a company that was called the Indian English Tea Company, okay, which was a major company that developed the world, to get to India to get tea and get cotton from India. To come to England, you had to go around Africa, all the way down to the floor, to go around South Africa to come up to get to India. And the Suez Canal made it possible to go through the Mediterranean Sea, through the Suez Canal, to get to India, and saved months in order to do that. Not days, months in order to do it. So the Suez Canal was the first thing that made the world smaller. 1901, some of these dates are going to surprise you. 1901, Australia became independent. Until 1901, Australia was part of England. So if somebody in China or Japan or in LA or San Francisco, if they wanted to do business with Australia, they had to go to London in order to do business with Australia, because it was part of England. 1901, Australia got independence. 1903, Panama Canal. A huge deal. Okay, it took them 20 years to do it. The French started it, couldn't finish it after 5 years. The United States took over, they finished it. It took them 20 years altogether, but you could go from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean without having to go around South America, just like the Suez Canal kept you from having to go around Africa. So it made business easier. It made it smaller. Right? What happened in 1914? All right, World War I. 1914 to 1917. Now, what do wars do for business? Or what does the end of wars do for business? Huh? I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
It makes business boom.
Makes business boom. Why?
Because people are getting back to their normal life if they want stuff.
All right. So when World War I is over, which included more countries than in World War II, business within each country booms. But how does that do it in making the world smaller? What happens after a war?
There's allies.
Allies. When you are allies in a war, when England is allies with France, who normally don't like each other, and Spain was actually independent. We're fighting Austria and Germany, allies with Russia, USA and Canada. All of you, when this over with, business people say, hey, I remember the guy that was in the foxhole with me. And he told me that he was a shoemaker. And I'm going to get in touch with him and see if he can send me some shoes to South Carolina. And that literally is how it happens. You meet people from other countries and you call them and you do business with them after a war. All right. The other thing that you probably, which isn't taught in America, y'all may have, some of the international people may know it, but it's like, Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was Arabs. The Ottoman Empire was all of Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and all of northern Africa. All right? The Ottoman Empire was huge. And right here is Turkey. It was based in Turkey, but it was thousands, a billion people. And the rest of the world didn't know anything about it. They didn't know their language. They didn't know what they made. They didn't know what they built. It was just a closed part of the world. Well, as a matter of fact, they were 100 years ahead of the rest of us in medicine. They invented math. They invented our alphabet. Okay, they were doing things in the Ottoman Empire that we needed and didn't know it. Well, the people in Turkey made the bad decision to side with the losing side. So when the Ottoman Empire is over, this whole area and those billion people become part of the world. All of a sudden, you could go to Egypt. You could go to Cairo. You could go to Turkey. You could go to Constantinople and do business. So it made the world smaller because of the Ottoman Empire losing. Right? Now, this is just a funny thing. Have you ever wondered why Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, have you ever wondered why those countries are squared off? Right? When World War I was over, a British general and a French general got together in Paris, and you ever heard the term draw a line in the sand? Okay, draw a line in the sand is, you know, if he and I are out in the quad and we've had a dispute, I take my foot, I draw a foot on the line in the sand, say, Lars, you cross that line, I'm going to beat your ass. All right? And that's what drawing a line in the sand means. Well, that comes from the British general and the French general sat down with a map and drew lines in the desert. They drew a line for Iran and Iraq. They drew a line for all of these other Arab countries. And the problem is the Arabs are tribal. So you had the Shiite and the Sunnis. And they had their own towns and their own cities. And it's like in Northern Ireland when the Republicans fought with the Catholics, when the Protestants fought with the Catholics, these people hated each other, and because of these lines, all of a sudden they were living together in the same country. And we're still having to deal with that because they hate each other. All right, what happened next? 1931, kind of like Australia, 1931, South Africa became independent from Britain. Johannesburg, Cape Town, if you wanted to do business with them, you had to go to London first. Now you could take a boat and go directly to there. And this may surprise some of you. It might not surprise Emma. 1931, Canada became independent. Okay, I mean, that's not even 100 years ago. All right, in 1930, 1940, 1950, if you wanted to do business, if you were in New York City and you wanted to do business in Toronto, you had to go to London and had to come back in order to get that business done. So when Canada got independence in 1931, that was a big deal. All right, 1940 and 1945, World War II. large World War II. That is the same thing as World War I. When it's over with, all of a sudden, Germany is open for business. Germany had been closed for business since World War I, World War II, and then after World War II, we had access to the German machinery, and in 50 years, Germany is one of the leading countries in the world, and you know, it does not just automobiles, but any other engineering, they were open for business. 1947, the United Nations, so here's New York City, the UN is formed. The reason why the UN is important, because if Australia wanted to do business with Italy, they could do it now in New York City, okay, because they're in the same place. So the UN, again, makes it smaller to do business. 1949, NATO. NATO made it possible for the European countries to have open borders and to help defend itself, and so it made it easier to do business. All right, does anybody know, y'all are so young, but does anybody know what happened in 1972?
Did you say Berlin Wall?
Huh? What big happened in 1972 that has to do with what we're talking about?
We got off the gold standard.
Huh?
We got off the gold standard. U.S.
Well, it has to do with the U.S. In 1972, President Nixon went to China. Probably the only thing good President Nixon ever did. All right, but Nixon said, I don't care if they're communists. There are 3 billion people that live there, and we need to be doing business with them. They're building things. They're making things. There's 3 billion people. We need to sell things to China. And so in 1972, Nixon went to China, and it was like the Ottoman Empire had been. China was completely cut off from the world. Nobody would do business with them because they were communists. And President Nixon said, I don't care if you're communists. I just want to do business with you. 1990. What happened in 1990?
Germany became one.
Berlin Wall came down. All right, so when the Berlin Wall comes down, not only do we have both Germanys that we can do business with, all of these Lithuanians and Estonians and Bulgarians, all of these little countries that were part of the USSR, now they're all a country. Communism was over, and all of these little countries were now what? Available for business. Available for business. So instead, if you wanted to buy oil in Bulgaria, you didn't have to go to Moscow. You could go to Bulgaria. And don't. I'm kind of trying to make this fun, but this is big deal stuff. I mean, this changes how we do business. About the same time the Berlin Wall came down, USSR, 1991, the USSR became no more and became simply Russia, and all of those countries that the USSR, that Russia had overcome, went back to being countries of their own. All right, now, that is globalization, what I just showed you. Globalization is making the world smaller. Now, 2 things happened in 2016 that started it going in the other direction. Politics is cyclical. Business relies on politics. So what happened in 2016 where people started to go back saying, we're only going to do business in our country. We don't want to do business with the world. Nationalism is the opposite of globalism. So what happened in 2016? Two things. The first, Trump. Make America first. He didn't want to do business anywhere else. He wanted all business to be done in America. Okay. After Trump said that, France started thinking about it, and their president started talking about it, but what country joined Trump? Brexit. Okay, Brexit. Write that down there about Trump. England and Scotland said, we don't want to be part of Europe anymore. We don't want to use the euros. We don't want open borders. We want you to have a passport to come in instead of being able to go from Italy to Austria without a passport. We didn't want to have to worry about Greece going bankrupt. All right, so we were going to go back and have our own money and our own country. So nationalism, backing off a little from globalism, was Trump and Brexit. Now, I have in the past, depending on what kind of class I have in the past had an extra credit with these dates and had them all blank. And if you could fill them in like this student did last year, then you might get some extra credit. So make sure you get a picture of that. Thank you, Loris. Now, how would I put globalism into an exam, into a final exam? If you have formed a business, corporation or partnership or LLC, and I put in the fact situation that your business makes silicon chips or computer chips, and the basic business equation, their profits are not very high. Management decides in a SWOT that they want to look for opportunities in other countries. That's a key word. If I say, they need to look for business outside of the United States, well, that you need to look for key words. So you would simply add a paragraph. This is also a globalization issue. And this partnership, this corporation can sell or buy from another country, and that is easier to do because the world is smaller for business. Okay, you understand that? Okay, to just tell me, well, this is a globalization issue, they can sell to France. Well, that's not enough. This is a globalization issue, and they can sell to France because the world has been made smaller. All right. Now, you don't need a picture of this map. I'm going to put something else up here. I didn't hear anybody clapping, though. Okay. International law is done with treaties. A treaty between two countries agreeing to do business together. It has to be negotiated. between the two countries. It has to be signed. The signing of treaties is pretty much ceremonial. They'll have two presidents sit there and sign it. The signing of the treaty is not as important as executing. Executing the treaty means that it goes to Congress, it goes to the Senate, it goes to the French Assembly, it goes to the Italian Parliament, right? What's the government in Italy? You know? All right, it goes to the Spanish Parliament. Yep. I just assume y'all know everything about the country. You know, I mean, I assume she knows about Finland for all I know, you know. All right. But it has to be executed by the Parliament or the Congress from that country. Then it has to be, and this is kind of weird, it has to be used. Because treaties have a time limit on it, say 20 years maybe. And if the treaty's not used, then it has to be redone. So if the United States wants to buy coffee from Venezuela, okay, if they want to buy coffee, then you would need a treaty from the U.S. to Venezuela that had all four of these things in there. All right, and then once that's done, then you know, okay, I can buy coffee there, I can sell bourbon there, I can buy coffee, sell bourbon. All right, but how do you do that? In order to do it, you have to have a contract between the businesses that covers some basic stuff. Language. What language are we going to use? What currency are we going to use? If we end up suing each other, what law are we going to use? Venezuelan law or American law? Depending on what law we use, what courts are we going to use? So I'm back to my exam question. You have formed a corporation, a management issue. You've done a SWOT, and as an opportunity, you've decided you want to sell in another country. So in a globalization issue, this is also a globalization issue. You say the world has become smaller in the last 100 years because of various factors. You don't have to list them. And then you say this is also an international law issue. We would need a treaty. The treaty would need to be negotiated, signed, executed, and used. And then in addition to the treaty, we would have to have a contract between the two businesses that covered language, currency, law, and courts. All right, does everybody understand what we're talking about? Okay? We're talking about making it easy to do business. And now that it's easy to do business, how do we do it? A treaty and a contract. It's pretty straightforward. I won't use a map in the exam. All I'm looking for, I'm looking for this word. I'm looking for this word. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this. And that's it. Okay? I mean, that's what I'm looking for. The rest of it was just an illustration that I hope you got something out of as to how the world's been made small. I mean, y'all, people your age, even people my age, we just take for granted, you know, if you want to buy a Mercedes, we can go to Columbia and buy it, or we can go to Berlin and buy it and ship it over, and we might get a better price. And we just, I mean, don't even think about it. But it's not, you know, we can go to Greenville, you know, and buy a BMW or Spartanburg, because the world's been made smaller. And BMW can come over here and build a factory. I mean, that would, 50 years ago, that was unheard of. It just didn't happen. Okay, so that's, y'all are in a new part of the business world. All right, any questions about international law or globalization, treaties, contracts? Okay, now if that's on the final test, and you say they need a contract in order to do business, you don't have to go into contracts with offer acceptance and consideration and talk about contracts like you would in another question. Okay, just simply have to say they need a contract.